So welcome everyone. It's great to have you here. It's finally happened. And when Lucy contacted Michael, I don't know, it was about 6 months ago, about coming, and Michael mentioned to me, I said yes, because that influences where I go. And also on Saturday night, can you believe that I just did meetings in Dubai, and the royal family contacted Michael and said the daughter has been watching the lectures, would you come to the palace? And all we had was Saturday night, so we did, and a driver took us to the palace, and we went into a sitting room that was 6 times bigger than this. Anyway, it was very large. Anyway, we chatted for a couple of hours. She had about 6 ladies with her, and one of the attendants took Michael inside and said, would Barbara consider delaying her flight because the princess wants to spend more time with you? And we both said no, because I had an appointment here. And I'm very committed to my appointments. no matter who it is. And that's what God is. God is not a respecter of person. The King of England and the pauper in the streets of England are both just as important to him. Yeah? So we should also be such. I always like to begin with a word of prayer. So if you don't mind, I'll ask God. Father in heaven, we've come to you, the greatest teacher this world has ever known. Teach us this morning, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen. I'd like to begin by showing you 2 systems of healing, because in these lectures we're going to be talking about the fact. I'm not interested in theories, I'm interested in fact. In the fact that this body was designed to heal itself. And it'll heal itself if you give it the right conditions. But in the world today there are two basic systems of healing, and one is based on fear. And God said in 2 Timothy 1 verse 7, he said, I've not given you the spirit of fear, but of power, love, and of a sound mind. Knowledge is power. And my aim is to empower you this week with knowledge. So notice what God said, I have not given you the spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. And we're keeping the sound mind for way, way, way up to Saturday morning, where we'll talk about the mind. The sound mind considers these things. You see, God's government is a government of freedom, and freedom is based on free choice. And any government brings in mandates. That's not God's government, because what's God's government based on? Free choice. And so I am the master of my destiny. I am the one that chooses what I do and what I do not do to my body. And never should we make a decision on fear. So this system that is based on fear, and didn't the whole world close down in 2020 because of fear? Is there any other reason that it closed down? No. So this system is based on a theory. And this theory maintains that we evolved. Apparently from a piece of slime or something like that. And because we evolved, we cannot heal. And because we cannot heal, we have to go and get help, and what is presented to us, drugs. The pharmaceutical company is a deceptive company. It's actually based on fear, and it's based on deception. Deception means not as it seems. The other system of healing is based on faith. And by the way, we can strengthen our faith. Faith grows strong by earnest conflict with fear and doubt. When the fear arises, then you go to battle. Because faith grows strong by earnest conflict with fear and doubt. We're all tempted, we're all challenged, but it's, nah, No. No, thank you. Because it's my choice. It's my choice. This system of faith was based on the fact that we were created in the image of God. And that's what the Bible says, that we were created in the image of God. What an honour. Compare that to actually being evolved from slime. It brings man up. It elevates man. This system is based on the fact that we were created by God with an inbuilt ability to heal. We were created in the image of God. We were created to heal. And if the body's not working well, we need to put our detective hat on and find out why. We're going to be looking at a lot of whys this week, because the human body will heal, here's the two-letter word, if you give it the right conditions. And we're going to teach you those conditions this week. If it's not working well, I thank God that He's given us herbs. And in Psalm 104 verse 14, the Bible says that God gave herbs for the service of man. I love that verse. Just picture the servants. Herbs come in and say, where would you like me? What would you have me do? Whereas drugs, they come in and say, get out of my way, I've got a job to do whether you need it or not. That's why if someone's on blood thinners and they start to change their lifestyle and the blood starts to get thin, too thin, because you know what the drugs do? I've got to thin this blood, I've got to thin this blood, even if the blood's already thin. And then the blood comes out of the nose, it comes out of the eyes. Every time they bump themselves, they bruise. Because that's what drugs do. They just got to, I must do whether you need it or not. Whereas herbs work with the body. That's why the Bible says God gave herbs for the service of man. They're here to serve you. And if you take a bucket of cayenne pepper a day, your blood will not get so thin that you're going to bleed, bruise, because they work with the human body. And yet I don't know anyone that has a bucket of cayenne pepper a day. Do you? Do you know what God's also given us? A bit of common sense. Is that right? It's not very common today, is it? This system is based on truth. And that's why in Psalm 146, the Bible says in verse 3, and you'll hear me quote this quite a lot, put not your trust in princes. Who are the princes? Aren't they the authorities in the field? The authorities in nutrition, the authorities in medicine, the authority in any field. It doesn't mean you don't listen, but you know what you do? You do that sound mind. If someone says, this is what I think you should do, you listen to what they say and you weigh up the pros and cons. So any health authority that says to you, you've got this, you've got to do this immediately, you know what you say? Thank you so much for your advice. See what I'm doing? Smiling. Thank you so much for your advice. You are thanking them because they've done the best they know. You take their paper, their prescriptions, and you say, I'll seriously consider this. And you leave very quickly, saying under your breath, don't call me, I'll call you. Because they are doing you a service. And what can you do with their advice? You can take it or you can leave it. How do you determine whether you take it or leave it? That's where you use the sound mind. You weigh up the pros and cons. You know, every single morning on my husband's desk, there's a to-do list. A to-do list. Where you write it down. You write down the pros and you write down the cons. If you want to know the negative side, what's the drug that they've advised? Google it. Have a look at the side effects. Write them down. Because every drug has a side effect. In a crisis, a drug can save a life. There is no doubt about that. There is no doubt about that. And surgery's come a long way. But I talked to an orthopaedic surgeon. Actually, Googled, we had a podcast, and it was in London. He's just lost his licence because he's speaking out against the vaccine. And he said to me, do you know, before I stopped, and he's only a young man, he only looked like his early 40s, he said, only 5% of my patients was I operating on. Oh, I love that story. He was getting them to go to physiotherapists. He was getting them to start exercising, changing their diet, starting to drink more water. Thus, he discovered me and interviewed me. Oh, I love that story. Only 5% of his patients, and they all came to him for surgery.
Wow, that's amazing.
It is. I was on the plane one day, and because I'm a platinum and frequent flyer, I'm always up the front of the plane. And the guy next to me had a suit, looks like he was in his 70s, and he had a book, and it was cellular nutrition. So I sat down and I said, that looks like an interesting book. And he looked at me and said, who are you? I said, I'm Barbara-O'Neill, and who are you? He said, I'm Dr. Da-da-da-da-da. I said, what do you do? He said, I'm an orthopaedic surgeon. Anyway, we got talking. He said, 80% of the operations I do are unnecessary.
But he still does it.
He said, oh, well, they want them. They want them. And look at the book he's reading, Cellular Nutrition. He said, I've just done a total knee replacement on this lady, this obese lady. He said, I don't know how they'll ever heal. Because you know what knees don't like, excess weight. Anyway, when we finished, I said, well, if ever I need an orthopaedic surgeon, I'll give you a call. And you know what he said? Oh, I'll never see you. You see, he knew. He knew. So what is the true cause of disease? Isn't that the million-dollar question? So we're going to look at the two main theories in medicine today. Notice I call them the two main theories. One is genetics. Oh, it's not me, it's in my genes. Notice that statement, it's not me, it's in my genes. I'm so glad and I'm so thankful to God that we are not subject to our genes. Because the fact is that genetics may load the gun, but it's lifestyle that pulls the trigger. Praise God for that. My mother was a cripple in a wheelchair with rheumatoid arthritis. She died at 51. Well, you've noticed I'm way past 51. I'm not a cripple in a wheelchair with rheumatoid arthritis, and I'm not dead because genetics loads the gun, but it is lifestyle that pulls the trigger. So even if our mother and our grandmother, it doesn't mean you've got it. And the brain is an amazing thing. Every cell in the body is obedient to the brain. And if the brain says, I'm going to get arthritis, you know what the body says? Okay. Got that? Okay. That's why if ever a doctor says to you, you've got 3 months to live, you've got every right to say, no, thank you. Or you can say what one lady said, you're not God. He's the only one that knows when I'm going to die. So if someone says, I've been given 3 months to live, you know what I say to them? Have you rejected that one? Because, do you know, sometimes they get it wrong. Did you hear that? If someone says, my husband, a whole heap of tests, you know what he says? Oh, I don't believe that. And they said, but Michael, these are the blood tests. He said, yeah, but they could be wrong. If only people would put faith in God that they put in those tests. Because they do get it wrong. One lady said that her husband, he had pain in his prostate, he's in the operating theatre, they did a biopsy, they're waiting. They're all scrubbed up and waiting. I used to work in operating theatre, I know. You wait to get the report from pathology. If it's malignant, take it out. If it's benign, sew them up. The report came back, 57 years old, malignant. So they basically castrated him. Then they found out 2 weeks later, it was the wrong report. Hey? Sorry about that, the wrong paper came through. I think they sued then. We're going to go inside the cell quite a few times this week because I call this the CBD, the Central Business District of the human body, the inside workings of the cell. And today we're going to go right into the nucleus and we're going to look at the DNA. And the DNA is the genetic code that determines the colour of our skin, the colour of our hair, the colour of our eyes, how tall we are. When I was in Tennessee a few years ago, I came down the escalators. I always look around. When I see someone look at me, they're usually the ones that are going to pick me up. And this man was sitting in a rocking chair. They have rocking chairs in Tennessee in the airport. And he stood up and he just kept going. He was 6'10". Then I met his son, 6'6". So how come he wasn't 6'10"? Because he's got a 5'4" mother. So we have 23 chromosomes from our mother, we have 23 chromosomes from our father. And don't we often look at our brothers, our sisters, our nephews, our nieces, grandparents, children, and say, oh, she's got her mother's eyes, oh, she's got her father's nose. And sometimes it comes through strong and sometimes it doesn't come through strong. When I was in Fiji, I was talking to this lady, she said, do you know that a few generations ago, my grandmother was a little white lady. She was the daughter of a trader on the coast, and they used to get the big, strong men from the interior down on the docks to load everything. Well, this little white girl fell in love with a Fijian guy from the interior, and apparently they ran off together. And she had blonde hair and blue eyes. She said, that was my great-grandmother, and every now a white kid comes through with blue eyes and blonde hair. Where did that come from? But what you'll notice, and I'm sure you see it in your own family, some get this and some don't, and some get this. And this DNA is actually made up of the food that we eat. So the outside strands are made up of polysaccharides. Polysaccharides sounds like a long word, but poly means many and saccharides means sugars. So the outside strands are made up of polysaccharides, and the inside bands are made up of amino acids. And amino acids is just a breakdown from the protein that we eat. And the glue that glues all this together is minerals. And the highest source of minerals comes from vegetables, and of the vegetable kingdom, the highest source is found in your dark green leafies. Hippocrates said, let food be your medicine and medicine be your food, and he didn't know what I've just told you, because he didn't know about the DNA, but the very DNA is made up of basically the food that we eat. Hippocrates said, let food be your medicine and medicine be your food. Because that's what we're made up of what we eat. And when I'm in some supermarkets and look what's in their trolley, you know what I think? How will their DNA ever be made? But what's happening today is damage to the DNA. Isn't there enzymes that run up and down to remedy any little glitzers? Yes, there are. But if the person isn't supplying the body with the nutrients that those enzymes are made of, can you see even that can be deficient? And we're constantly being remade according to the formula, according to the pattern. But the problem is, people are not healing. You see, we're constantly being remade, new eye cells every 1 to 2 days. They heal very, very quickly. If you have eye surgery or anything happens to the eye, heals very, very quickly. So if you get something into the eye, you've got to get it out. Otherwise the cells grow over it. And it's so uncomfortable that we can't rest, we can't lie down, we can't sleep. And what's the body saying? Get it out, get it out, get it out. I'll tell you one piece of very interesting information. We had a guy way up in the rainforest when we were 2 hours from town, a bit of metal got in his eye. What are you going to do? And then some bright spark got a magnet and put it up near the eye and it just flew out of the eye. Oh, it's nice. When you're up in the rainforest, you become very resourceful. And I'm just so glad I was way up in the rainforest when my children were little, because then you start thinking of what can I do to remedy this. The next quickest, so that's every 1 to 2 days, the eye cells. The next quickest is the cells that line the gastrointestinal tract. They're remade every 3 to 5 days. Skin every month, liver every 6 weeks, and bones every 3 months. We're constantly being remade according to the formula. So the question is now, well, if we're constantly being remade, why don't people heal? Is that a reasonable question? It's a very reasonable question. And there can be a few reasons why they're not healing. And one is there's damage to the DNA. Because if there's damage in the DNA, then the new cell cannot be made right. Let me give you an illustration. So I'm going to show you how a new gastrointestinal tract cell is made. All the information is photocopied, because even though the DNA can be pulled out and then coiled back in, it can't leave. So RNA is the photocopy of the information, and it comes down to ribosome. Ribosome is the little factory where the new cell is made. And so the information comes in, and now it starts to be made, and I'm going to explain it like the building of a brick wall for purposes of illustration. The first brick goes down, and that's an amino acid, maybe it's phenylalanine. The next brick goes down, maybe it's methionine. The next brick goes down, maybe that's tyrosine. The next brick goes down, maybe that's lysine. Can you see what's happening here? Every amino acid is a slightly different shape, and it fits in perfectly like a jigsaw. And every 3 to 5 days, out pops a new gastrointestinal tract cell. What about irritable bowel? What about Crohn's disease, colitis, which are all inflammation of the gastrointestinal tract? Why aren't they healing? Let's have a look. So the information comes down and into the ribosome, and the new cell starts to be made. Maybe phenylalanine is there. And then it's time for the next one to go in, but the problem is there's a piece of information missing. I knew a lady who used to make a beautiful chocolate cake. This is when I was a child. But my mother told me every time she gives the recipe out, she leaves one piece of the recipe out because she doesn't want anyone to make it as beautiful as I think it's a bit silly myself, but you see, if all the pieces aren't in place, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Same with the making of a new cell. So we've got a piece of information missing and not sure what to put in there, and then there's a rogue cell, and this rogue cell is a breakdown from environmental poisons, and we're all exposed to environmental poisons. This week you're going to have a look at some common ones that people aren't aware of. We have no say over the neighbour, but we have total say over what goes into our body. That's why I'm the master of my destiny. I'm the one that chooses what I wear, what I wash my hair in, what I clean my teeth in, etc., etc. And these environmental poisons, they're coming in many, many ways, as we will see. So we're making a new cell, and now we're down to the next one, and that's tyrosine. Well, tyrosine comes along, but where does it fit? It's actually got nowhere to fit. It's not looking like a very great cell at the moment. And then we've got another problem. The person's protein deficient. Why are they protein deficient? Well, they are eating protein, but they keep drinking large amounts with their meal. It washes away their hydrochloric acid, so they can't break down their protein. And they're stressed out, which stops the amino acids being broken down because the enzymes aren't there. And they're eating all day long, which is totally exhausting their enzymes. So the protein is being eaten, but it comes out the other end because it doesn't get broken down so it can be absorbed. And a new irritable bowel, Crohn's disease, colitis cell is created every 3 to 5 days. I met one lady who attended our lectures, and she'd had irritable bowel for 30 years. She implemented, and we'll be talking about this in another lecture, the basic principles. She changed her diet, she started taking herbs. In 48 hours the bleeding had stopped. In 48 hours the cramping had stopped. 30 years she struggled with it. What an incredible body, and how quickly, especially in the gut, it can heal when you give it the right conditions. What I want to look at now is what causes the damage. What causes damage to the DNA? 92% of DNA damage, the research is showing, is caused by a mineral deficiency. A mineral deficiency? Remember, it's minerals that glue us together. How could we be mineral deficient? Especially when people are eating more greens today. And I mention greens because that's the highest source of minerals. In fact, we didn't even know what kale or rocket was 30 years ago. So many more greens today. What we have to look at is how it's grown. And what's happening today is the soils are deficient because the same crop is just grown again and again and again. And because the bugs will attack the crop. Do you know the bugs will only attack the weak crops? And because the bugs attack the crops, then they spray them. That's really old-fashioned, isn't it? Spraying like that. Pumping. So this is further depleting the minerals. So 92% of DNA damage is caused by a mineral deficiency. That's why organic food is so important. At our retreat, we're not 100% organic. We do the best we can. We grow as much as we can. We find a garden. I was talking to Arthur yesterday. Garden is one of the hardest things to find. If you can't grow your own food, at least grow parsley, rocket, kale. If you're in an apartment, have pots. I was in Dubai last week. They said it's so hot. I said, I noticed there's trees. If you can grow a tree, if you can grow grass, you can grow parsley. They said, oh yeah. In fact, I was also talking to a man in Australia. He said he's been doing this for 20 years, shipping his horse manure over to Dubai because it's just sand. So it needs to have some substance in that soil so that the plants can grow. But you probably heard about a month ago there was all that rain in Dubai and there was all that flooding. Yes. I was talking to one lady, she said the desert came alive. Those little tiny seeds that can actually lie in that sand for 20 years, and then a bit of water comes on and they come alive. So mineral deficiency is one of the biggest causes of DNA damage. So not only are people eating mineral deficient food, because if the soil's deficient, the plant's deficient, and the human that eats that plant will be deficient. But stimulants are leaching the minerals out. So we've not only got a bad supply of minerals today, we've got stimulants that are taking them out. Refined sugar. In fact, one writer said, refined sugar leaves the body better dressed than when it went in. How did it go into your body? It actually went in totally naked. And it came out dressed with your minerals. As you will discover that calcium is the most alkaline mineral. So that's one that the body uses a lot. Calcium and magnesium are the two. It pulls the calcium and magnesiums out of, where's that storage house? Bones. To keep negating that acid environment. And so what's happening to the mineral status of the body? Less, less, less. Another one is caffeine. We call this Australia's darling. What's a darling? Something they love. Most people groan when I mention caffeine because so many people drink coffee. So people say to me, do you drink coffee, Barbara? I say, no, I just watch the people suffer. Day one at our health retreat. And if you are a coffee drinker and if you do get the standard coffee headache, let us know, because there are little bits and pieces we can do to bring relief. And I find that experience turns a lot of people off coffee. So caffeine, loud voice in that lift, isn't there? So caffeine and refined sugar, and how often is it a combination of those two? It's true, isn't it? And how many people, when they have their cup of coffee, have a croissant or a muffin or a biscuit? And I was offered it on the plane yesterday, sponge cake with jam and cups of coffee. A combination. How many cereals are a combination of those two? And every cake shop, what's it got? Everything in the cake shop, what's it made out of? The sugar and the wheat. Yeah. Another stimulant that leaches minerals is alcohol. And later in the week we'll be looking at the acid alkaline lecture, and you will see that when people are eating a high acid diet, there's a constant leaching of the minerals out of the bones to calm down that acid environment that is created. But not only does refined sugar leach the minerals, refined sugar also damages the DNA. How does it damage the DNA? Well, what sugar does, it gets the blood sugar level up very high very fast. You see, God designed humans to eat sugar cane, not refined sugar. And it takes about 1 metre of sugar cane to give 1 teaspoon of sugar. So it's quite a toxic drug, and it's incredibly acid.
Sorry, so sugar cane's all right too?
Yeah. How long does it take you to eat sugar cane? Have you ever eaten it? It takes about half an hour to eat 2 inches. And what's the message from God? Just a little, just a little. And the reason why it's perfectly fine is because it's full of minerals. So what do they give horses to give them shiny coats? Molasses. What's molasses? Molasses is actually the byproduct of refining the sugar cane. There's all the minerals. It's all the minerals. So every horse trainer knows you want a shiny coat on your horse, give him molasses. And that black is just concentrated minerals. So what happens with sugar? The blood sugar level goes up very fast. It's not slowed down by the minerals and the fibre as it is in the sugar cane. And so very quickly, the brain says, quick, pancreas, we need a corresponding amount of insulin to get this blood sugar level down. But then too much insulin's released, so now it goes too low. And when it goes down too low, the brain says, oh dear, stop the insulin, release the glucagon. But what does the person do when the blood sugar level goes low? They have another lolly, is that right? They have another cup of coffee. That gets it up. And you see that constant up, down, wears the pancreas out. And you can have a couple that are having, sugar and caffeine. They can give birth to a baby with a weakened DNA to their pancreas. These are the 2-year-olds, these are the 10-year-olds that are getting diabetes today. When I was a child, I never heard of a child with diabetes. So sugar damages the pancreatic gene. Caffeine, what does it damage? It damages the gene for the neurotransmitters in the brain. As we'll find out in another lecture, that's what caffeine does. It disrupts the neurotransmitters in the brain. Now, it's not the one day that a person might have a cup of coffee, but it's day after day after day after day after day after day, eventually damaging the DNA to the neurotransmitters so that person can give birth to a baby that has a tendency to attention deficit syndrome, and by the way, isn't that one out of control today? Autism, even epilepsy. But you can have 10 children with both parents that are doing that, because it comes from both sides, remember, and maybe only 4 will have attention deficit syndrome. So we are what we are today because of our genes, but also because of our environmental, how the environment in utero, our birth, how we're fed, whether we're treated with potato poultices or drugs, or all of that makes us who we are. That's why I believe that God designs each one of us to be our own doctor. And part of being your own doctor is doing this. Listen. If it works, do it. If it doesn't work, keep adjusting till it works. It's actually that simple. Coming back to what damages the DNA, also tobacco. We're getting children born today with fetal alcohol syndrome, and also children being born today with less alveoli in their lungs, holes in the honeycomb shape around the alveoli, which is where the breathing, the gaseous exchange takes place, all because of the parents' smoking habits. One girl said, I stopped smoking as soon as I fell pregnant. I said, well, that's a good choice. But the problem is the DNA was already damaged. Now, if you're feeling sad right now because you've done everything wrong, I've got some good news. As soon as you start doing everything right, the body starts responding. There's a verse in the Bible that says, to him that has breath, there's hope. And that's why one doctor in America, he said, we've got to rule at our clinic. If they're still alive, bring them in. Because while there's breath, there's hope. Looking at what damages the DNA chemicals. We have so much chemical exposure today. It is estimated 100,000 new chemicals. Eesh. And it comes in so many hidden forms, in our clothes, what we wash our clothes in our foods, shampoo, perfumes. When you fly, you go through the tax-free area. Oh, the perfumes. I was in the mall in Dubai last week, and this guy comes running up, and before you even think about it, he's put a bit of something on your wrist, and oh! So I just overpowered me. I had to keep the hand like this till I could find somewhere to wash it, because I'm very used to natural scents. So I'm very sensitive. I can smell them. Smell the toxic ones straight away. So be careful of the chemicals. We'll be looking at that in more detail as we go through the lectures. There are many hidden ways, but I'll just mention something that I'll talk about a few times. NAP. This is how you can remember. Nylon, acrylic, polyester. Now you might have to get a 10-year-old or a magnifying glass to read the labels. Have you noticed? The most important things that we need to know are in the finest print. I actually go to the sun and read it in the sun. Nylon, acrylic and polyester. They're chemical fabrics. They were created in a chemical laboratory. Now that's enough for me. Anything that's created in a chemical laboratory, I'm not interested. See, men, it's not usually men. They wear cotton underpants, cotton shirts, cotton undershirts, cotton singlets. I'm not in America, I can say singlets because you know what a singlet is. Americans don't know what a singlet is. Cotton jeans, whereas ladies like the pretty things. And I think you'll be quite shocked when you start reading your labels at how many are made out of that. So it was in 2022 that Heathrow Airport lost my bags for 5 weeks. And I had to go and buy some clothes. So I went into the underwear department. I would say 5% of the bras they had were made out of cotton. But if every lady knew the dangers, and if every lady only bought cotton, or there are some other fabrics, Modal. Modal's a good one. Modal viscose is bamboo, and Rayon is also derived from wood, and tencel. So these are all made out of wood. It is true that a chemical is used to soften the fabric, but all you have to do is wash it and hang it in on the clothesline for a day. In America, they don't know what clotheslines are. So wherever I go, I say, no, I want my clothes in the sun, please. So they usually get me a little rack. But the sun, we'll talk about the wonders of the sun. The sun purifies. And very difficult to sleep. I said to Lucy this morning, I've just got a problem with the bed. She said, what's that? I said, it's so comfortable. And the sheets are so beautiful, it was hard to get up. So be careful what you're sleeping in. My daughter just bought me a linen nightie. It's very, very big. I look like I'm out of Little House on the Prairie. But oh, it's so nice to sleep in. So nice to sleep in. So be mindful of natural fibres. Now, if the outer garment is not, you know, it's more what's touching you. What's touching you is the biggest problem. So chemicals are coming in so many ways. Your cleaning products. One of the worst things you can put in your clothes is fabric softener. Eee, that's nasty stuff. Oh, it's all chemicals. And if you want a nice flavour scent in your washing, just put a couple of drops of lavender when you put your biodegradable washing detergent in. Gives a lovely scent. But the sun, drying anything in the sun gives a lovely scent. The biggest chemical company in the world is the pharmaceutical company. Drugs never cure disease. I'll be referring often to one of my first health books, which was The Ministry of Healing. And on page 127, the writer says, the only hope of better things is the education of people in the right principles. It's because of that sentence that I do what I do. But the next sentence says, let the physicians teach the people the restorative power lies not in drugs, but in nature. Did you know that doctor or physician means teacher? And I know in Australia, because of Medicare, they're only allowed to spend 15 minutes with the person. How much can you find out in 50 minutes? That's why you're the doctor. And part of being your own doctor is documenting your case. Got that? Start writing your history. If your mum's still alive, bring her up. Mum, what was my birth like? What was the first food that I had? When did I have it? What milk did I have? Was I vaccinated? Were there any reactions? A crying baby is a reaction to a vaccine. In fact, if the baby cries for 24 hours, that's an indication of brain damage. Put not your trust in princes, neither in the Son of Man in whom there is no help. I don't tell anyone what to do. And if a lady says, should I vaccinate? I said, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but if I were you, this is what I would do. I would get a printout from the chemist of what's in that vaccine, and you'll find the neurotoxins, the formaldehydes, the aluminiums. And whoever is going to inject your child, ask them to sign this piece of paper that they will be accountable if your child reacts. No child would be vaccinated. It's Florence Nightingale, your famous Florence Nightingale, that changed the childhood illnesses, because she increased hygiene, sanitation and nutrition. In fact, I think it was in about 1860, she wrote, they say we need a new children's hospital because 25,000 babies, little children, are dying every year. She said they're not dying because of a lack of hospital. They're dying because of a lack of hygiene, sanitation and nutrition.
Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt. Talking about vaccine, right? I'm from young going to Ghana, but before I get over there, they said I need to get yellow fever.
Yes, yes.
So what do I do in this case?
Well, in these countries, it's amazing what you can get if you flash a few dollars.
Which is true.
Sorry, it sounds terrible, but Yeah.
Okay.
And I know my husband got an exemption, and he went into the doctor's surgery. He got it ready, and then he squirted it down the skin, the sink, and signed it. But I would not. I'm the master of my destiny. I'm the one that chooses what I do and what I don't do. But when I went to Nigeria, I had to have it. And we tried to get an exemption. No one will give it, because if they give it, they can lose their license. But my friend, who's a natural doctor, he wrote a paper. He said, Barbara O'Neill has been to our medical facility a few times. She's highly reactive to the adjuncts in the vaccine, to the point that if she has one, she will possibly die. And they gave me an exemption. Now, one lady said, but that's not true. I said, it certainly is true. A friend of mine, his grandson, 16 years of age, was vaccinated for COVID. This is a year ago. They found him dead in his bed 2 days later. And they put on the death certificate, died of natural causes. People die from vaccines. It's like playing Russian roulette. You don't know. You don't know if you're the one. You don't know. So considering all that, I trust you have my answer.
Thank you.
Some drugs can be stopped immediately. Some have to be eased off. What about thyroid? What about if someone's had their thyroid taken out? Don't they have to be on thyroxine for the rest of their life? Well, God brought me into association with a lady that answered that question. And it was in Tanzania last year. She was in her about 69. They brought her to me. She said, they took my thyroid out 20 years ago. I said, so you're on thyroxine now? She said, no. I said, didn't the doctor put you on thyroxine? She said, oh, I wasn't going to go back to him. Yeah. What an incredible body we live in.
Wow.
And I got another great story not long ago. Little child had a kidney transplant. Now, what are you told if you have a kidney transplant? You have to stay on cortisone to stop the body rejecting it for the rest of your life. She said 2 years ago we took the child off it. The child was on the immune suppressant medication for 2 years. Because you know what I think? The blood that goes through the whole body goes through those kidneys. I said, thank you so much. 2 years the child has been off that medication. Put not your trust in princes, because they could be wrong. Neither in the Son of Man, in whom there is no help. His breath goes forth, he returns unto his earth. In that very day his thoughts perish. In other words, when he dies, he's dust. But look at the next verse. It's verse 5. Happy is he that hath the God of Jacob as his help, whose hope is in the Lord his God, that made heaven, earth, sea, and all that in them is, that keeps truth forever. That's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in truth, and there is a truth. Drugs never cure disease, they just change the form and location. Let the physicians teach the people that restorative power lies not in drugs, but in nature. The fact is, there is no wonder cure. Some people stop the drug, and then they're looking for the magic herb tablet. Well, there isn't one. There's only one thing that has the power to heal, and that's the human body. And what you'll discover as we go through this week, everything we need, we've got. We just need to access it. And that's why if you ever see Barbara O'Neill, they've done in artificial intelligence on me to make me say, use this product. I guarantee I'll never say that. I'm an expert. I'll never say that because I'm not. But God is. Then this product, you'll know that it is not me, because I never, ever push that. The one thing I do push is this incredible body that has an inbuilt ability to heal itself when you give it the right conditions. And Rome wasn't built in a day. So we've got the one-letter word, the two-letter word, the three-letter word. It's time to look at the four-letter word, which is time. Ecclesiastes chapter 3 says to everything there is a season and a purpose. for everything under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to pluck up which was planted, a time to kill, a time to heal, time to break down, a time to build up. As you go through this detox, there'll be a time to break down and there'll be a time to build up. So the first 2 days, there's going to be a bit of breaking down. And then on Wednesday, when you start eating, now we do some building up. Time, and it takes time. So my daughter, when she was 5, she said, "Mum, I'm going to grow up in a minute." Now we know she didn't grow up in a minute. I want to be better in a minute. But we're not. It takes time. So you've got to give the body time. The problem is if someone has a rash on their skin and they put cortisone on it, it goes away. So what people want is a herb that'll do that. But there actually isn't. The closest thing is ice. That'll stop the itch quicker than anything. So the cortisone makes the rash go away, but if you notice that 2 weeks later it comes back worse, because it's a deception. Remember what deception is? Not as it seems. We're looking at what causes damage to the DNA. What also causes damage to the DNA is genetically modified foods. I know in America and Australia, possibly the UK too, Monsanto is so big and so powerful, they win every court case where people are trying to put on labels if it's genetically modified or not. So it's not on the label. So how do you know if it's genetically modified? By organic. Because the organic farmer will lose his organic status if he uses genetically modified foods. Genetically modified foods is a result of the DNA of 2 species being spliced together in the hope to create, say, a tomato that grows in the snow, but it doesn't. They're playing with something they shouldn't play with. Genetically modified foods have the potential to damage our DNA. Vladimir Putin, Russia's president, he's passed a law that any Russian who grows genetically modified foods or sells it is to be considered a terrorist. And he's giving land away to any Russian who will grow organically. And I have to tell you, after what I see they wrote about me, I can't believe the news. So I don't even believe what the news says about Ukraine, Russia. Huh?
No, none of us.
No, yes. Put not your trust in princes, neither in the Son of Man, in whom there is no help. So genetically modified foods have the ability to tamper with our DNA. Electromagnetic field excess. We are electrical people. So please, don't charge your phones in your room while you sleep. Got that? Because it's called the silent killer. You can't see it, but it's interfering with our frequencies. I was reading the report of a breast surgeon who was alarmed at the amount of young girls who were getting breast cancer in the breast where they put their phones in their bra. You can even buy a bra today with a pocket in it for the phone. Okay, the phone just came out. I wonder how many total hip replacements they're going to have, because how many people put their phones in their back pocket? And I even see now they've got a pocket in the thigh. I wonder how many femurs are going to start breaking down. One man said to me, his daughter, she died of uterine cancer, and he said she was a nurse and she had this pocket and the phone always sat right there where her uterus was. So it's not the odd day you answer the phone to you, but if you keep that phone up to your head, up to your ear. And one guy, he started to lose the hair around where he always on the phone, always on the phone. We had an electromagnetic field excess to our program, and I said to him, can you just make it simple for me? Oh, it was still way over my head. So what I just say is this: we are electrical people. There's a spark of electricity in every cell. Our nervous system is our electrical system, and these devices, we know they have electromagnetic field. That's actually how they work. So and it's not the same as our body. So it's going to interfere with it. So please keep it away. To sleep well, we need to sleep in an electromagnetic field free zone. If you use an electric blanket, turn it off when you get into bed. And turn it off at the power point when you get into bed. If you've got, I see sheep when I was flying in here, so you must have wool. Woolen blankets, they will keep you nice and warm. So these are lots of little areas that many people don't realise. And I think it's tonight we're going to look at this last one in a little bit more detail. Mould and fungus have the ability to splice into the DNA. So that you'll see it a lot in nature where the lichen, the fungus, reproduces itself by splicing into the tree, repossessing us on. So mould is another toxic poison that many people are not aware of. I know Arthur's got quite a story about one house he was renovating and he was exposed to a lot of mould. You were nearly bedridden, weren't you, with the exposure to that? A lot of people don't realise how dangerous it is. So what we looked at this morning, we looked at the DNA, we looked at what made up the DNA, we looked at how the DNA working well, our body can repair, recover and heal, and also looking at what damages the DNA. So tonight we're going to have a look at the other theory in medicine, which is germs cause disease. But in this presentation this morning, I wanted to look at, well, does genetics cause disease? And I think you'll agree with what I've shown you. Genetics may load the gun, but it's lifestyle that pulls the trigger. And this is a study called epigenetics, the effect of our lifestyle. What we eat, what we do, we can actually turn the genes on or off. And on Saturday morning, we'll have a look even at how your thoughts can even affect it. Like if a person's told they've got 6 months to live and they live exactly 6 months. So it's not only affected every cell, but it's also affected the DNA. So what I'd like to open the floor...